Now you know it's late when the lights are off in the fish room and the sun's not out. Now I had to get this intro out to you guys because I had to let you know this is my first time actually videoing a talk. I'm not quite used to that format, but I did learn a lot from doing so. And one of the talks I got to see was Ken Boorman's Rainbowfish talk on Australian rainbowfish. Lots of really cool rainbowfish in this video, like so many species. And he shares a lot of those with me. He's a real cool guy. Actually, this discus book came from him. Got a couple of those. He had them there. These are Heiko Blair presses. Anyways, enough on that. Hope you guys enjoy this talk, so let's roll it. Oh, and this was from the NEC convention, the Northeast Council Convention, annual convention up in Cromwell, Connecticut. Such a great time.
Store in the office, and excuse me, I just had a long discussion about something, and I'm a little ticked off, so give me a minute. Yeah, and in any case, I don't want to take this out again. It's fine. But okay, I'm going to read from this so I don't go off script. Please turn off your cell phones. And Ken is being sponsored by the Boston Aquarium Society, which sponsored him yesterday, so we want to thank them very much. Ken is originally from Australia, but he's now living in Ontario. He's kept fish for over 50 years, and he's been especially interested in fish from Australia and New Guinea. He's a member of the Australian New Guinea Fish Association, and I'm going to plug that because I'm a member also. If you guys are interested in any kind of rainbows, any kind of fish from Australia, this is a terrific native fish group. He's the president. He's very active in the Canadian fish scene. I guess I covered all that. So, here's Ken.
Thank you very much. I'd like to add my thanks and appreciation to the Boston Aquarium Society for sponsoring me too. Today my talk is called Rainbow Fishes and Blue Eyes of Australia, a myriad of forms and species with a question mark. The question mark's there for a reason. You'll find that a lot of rainbows and blue eyes from Australia are going to be revised, and that's why it's extremely important, if you've got a locale, keep them separate from other locales or aquarium strains, because you might end up with a new species. And I hope to show you that today. Everyone knows what rainbows look like. Very pretty fish, excellent, better than cichlids for your aquarium. So kick out all your cichlids and put rainbows in. They're great. We've got a nano tank. The blue eyes are really good. They're about the size of neon tetras. So kick out all your tetras and put in blue eyes and you'll be happy. Now, rainbow fish belong to the family Melanotanidae and blue eyes are Pseudomagillidae. They're related, they're very similar, morphologically actually, but they're freshwater members of a really large group, the Athyriniforms. 95% of Athyrinids are saltwater. The other 5% are the rainbows and blue eyes from Australia, the Bedotias from Madagascar, and Celebes rainbow fish. I believe there is 1 or 2 Athyrinids in freshwater in Mexico too, and that's it. At the moment, there's 14 species of rainbow fish. Actually, I've got to update that. There's about 28 species of rainbow fish described now, and up to 10 blue eyes from Australia. All the rest are from New Guinea. New Guinea is incredibly prolific with rainbows and blue eyes. And Australia will be after my friend Peter Unmack gets through describing all the new species. They're very variable from stream to stream, and that first led him to assume that they're going to be different species, and DNA is proving him correct. The blue eyes are also quite variable, and again, they're going to be split up into different species as well. All the rainbows are all freshwater. Most of the blue eyes are freshwater, some are brackish, and some are even live in complete marine water. They're very colourful, as you know. You don't need that. Now, rainbowfish like clean water. As our friend Murray says, he said you do regular water changes and test results determine that was a lie. I'll tell you now to change the water of a rainbow tank or a blue eye tank every week, at least 10 or to 15% a week. To tell the truth, I do about 20% a month, which I think is pretty typical. That's enough to keep them alive and to reproduce, but they could do a lot better. If you up your water changes, they will do a lot better. So, rainbows go anywhere from 1.5, 2 inches right up to 7 inches. That's the supposed maximum length. I've seen them up to 9, and I'll tell you which species they are as we go through them. Blue eyes are around 1 to 2 inches, so as I said before, around about the size of a neon or a cardinal tetra. And that's adult fish, of course. I've got most of the rainbows and blue eyes from Australia in this talk. You'll see pictures of all of them, and hopefully it'll get you interested in them. And the males are obviously more colourful than the females, as in most fish. There's none where the females are better coloured than the males, particularly when they're breeding. These pictures that you'll see today, the photos, are all sparring behaviour between 2 males to get the best looking shots that the photographer could get. Now, as I said, all you need to do to breed these guys is to keep your water changes up and feed them well. And they will reward you by breeding. Now, if you've never bred rainbow fish before, the way to do it is to put a mop in, spawn into a mob. If there's no mop present, they'll use the aquatic plants in the tank. But it's easier to do to get them to spawn in a mob. You always keep them in schools of 5 to 7 with a 1 male to 2 female ratio, roughly, because the males tend to want to spawn all the time, and the females tend not to. So if you don't have more than 1 female, he'll hound her to death or shoot her out of the tank. That's a particularly pretty form of a rainbow. That's my favourite, actually, Rainbowfish ornatus, and that's going to be my next tattoo. Now, the easiest way to sex a male rainbow fish is that the males are larger than the females. They've got a deeper body with extended finnage. The first dorsal, the posterior section of the first dorsal overlaps the beginning of the second dorsal. With the female, it doesn't quite get there. You'll see good examples of both of them in this talk. Once you see it, it's very easy to sex a half-grown rainbow even. Also, the males exhibit a spawning stripe when they're in the mood, and that could be anywhere depending on the species: green, pink, orange, white, yellow. I think that's all the colours I've seen. And it's a fluorescent colour, starting from the beginning of the dorsal, going right down to the end of the nose, and they can turn this fluorescent colour off and on several thousand times a second, and it glows. Once you see it, you'll never mistake it for anything else. These guys like to breed in water that's about 22 Celsius. I think that's about 72 Fahrenheit. I'm sorry, I'm used to giving this talk in Canada. It's a lot of 70s anyway. They don't necessarily need a heater in their tank. I use, as I said before, I use spawning mops, and they're a bit like Rosario's chickens. They lay a few eggs every day, and it's much easier to take the mop out, drop in a new one after a couple of days. The eggs tend to hatch after 7 days. So if you don't want a huge variation in fry size, take out the mop after 2 days, drop it in a separate spawning raising tank, drop a new mop in, and just keep doing that. Just a little note about CARES. Most of you know CARES stands for Conservation, Awareness, Recognition, Responsibility, Encouragement, Education and Support Sharing. I've gone through and done all the blue eyes and half of the rainbowfish species on the CARES website, and all the CARES fish you'll see will have a little CARES symbol on the distribution maps that I'll be showing you. I haven't done Melantania yet because it's a huge group, huge family, and I just haven't had the time. But eventually it will get done. Gary Lamb, my buddy, has concurred with me on all my designations for CARES, so between us we're doing all the species. So if you're a CARES keeper, you'll see which ones to keep. Now just to give you an idea how big Australia is, that's the continental US in the background there, with the map of Australia superimposed over the top. Land mass, it's actually bigger than the continental US. The only thing that makes the US bigger is Alaska. Okay, there's Perth. Now if you could say, call that San Diego, and New York would be equivalent in distance to about Cairns up here, you can see that if you went to Australia, you couldn't see it even in a week. You're really pushing it. Perhaps a better description to show you the size though. What did I do? Broke it. Is that it's all of Europe and England and Ireland, and it fits nicely within Australia. There's some of the animals that we're known for. Everyone knows kangaroos, sugar gliders, and saltwater crocodiles. They're the ones you've got to look out for when you go collecting in the north of Australia. I put this in to describe, or to help show you why there's so many different species in Australia. There's a mountain range that goes all the way down the eastern side of Australia like that. Now when the weather comes in, it comes in across the Pacific, hits that mountain range and dumps all the water. So there's a lot of rivers on the coastal plain in Australia, all the way down that eastern side. There's an extensive river system here, the Murray-Darling. It's actually bigger in land area than the Mississippi. It's a huge river, but it doesn't flow all the time. Some of the storm clouds do get over the mountains there, and they drop in the catchment areas here, and that keeps the Murray-Darling flowing. In the very rare occasion that the cyclones or storm clouds come over here, that water finds its way down over several weeks into this area here. That's called Lake Eyre. It's normally a dry lake. It fills about once a decade. That's roughly about how long it is before the storm clouds get over. all this area in here is desert. If you saw my talk yesterday, you'll know that all this area here is desert too. This area here is desert. Those are dry lakes. So really this small area here in southwestern Australia has got fish. This area up here and then around there. So the forms of some of these species I'll be showing you differ so much in size and appearance, and their habitats are so widely separated that it can only be a matter of time before the taxonomy is cleaned up and they're going to be described as new species. I'll show you the ones that are going to be new species. I don't know what they're going to be called. It's up to Peter and Max. He'll be doing the describing. CF, where I use it, means compared with. So the ichthyologists use that to indicate a similarity to the named species, but they know it's going to be different. That's why you should keep any locales, if you know them, separate. First up is Kenzichthyes rhombus moides. Now this has got a very small range. This is a Cairns fish, as you can see from the Cairns logo there. It's only from around this area here, a very small distribution. It's fairly abundant in that distribution, but it's prone to the typical things in a developed country: pollution and loss of habitat through urbanisation. There's a picture of it. That's an 8 centimetre fish, so that's about 3.5 inches. They're a decent sized fish, very pretty, as you can see. The fins are quite outstanding actually. And you can see that the end of that first dorsal extends well past the beginning of the second dorsal there, so it's obviously a male. The anal fins are slightly pointed too, which is another indication the females is more rounded. And even though it's not an incredibly colourful fish, it's quite distinctly coloured, and it's favourite. It's great. This has been described just last year. It's the most recently described fish in my talk. And it's Kenzichthyes bitinialis. I haven't seen this fish myself personally, but it extends the range of Kenzichthyes by 120 kilometres, so that's about 80 miles, I guess, further north than where they used to think it just lived. Very pretty fish. I can't wait to get my hands on some to have a look. This is my favourite fish, Radnocentris ornatus. It only gets to 3 inches. It's got quite a different, large distribution down the east coast of Australia. There's a relay population here which is very, very close DNA-wise to the southernmost collection locale here. They seem to think that once it had a huge distribution all the way around here, and then through competition or whatever, the ones in the water courses in the middle had to evolve different strategies to survive, changed the colour and shape, and the ones in the extreme north and the extreme south are the ones that didn't suffer that same competition, so didn't have to change, and that's why they're very similar DNA-wise. But they're very pretty fish. Again, this is only a 3-inch fish. This is from a locale called Ceres Creek. It's part of a national park. It hasn't always been a national park. there are Ceres Creek fish out there. They weren't necessarily stolen from the national park. They were collected before it was a national park and bred up. There's two colour forms that occur in Ceres Creek. There's a red form, which is that one, which is the rarer of the two, and the blue form, which is that one. Now they both exist in the same locale, same creek even. That's the picture of the creek. It's got a sandy bottom, it's tannin stained because it's in a swampland. The maximum depth I can recall in Ceres is about 5 feet. It's normally about 2 feet high, deep. So it's not a very big stream. But the blue ones and the red ones exist together. There's no rhyme or reason. You can get a red female and a red male, spawn them, and you'll have both red and blue fry. Blue female, blue male, spawn them, you'll have both red and blue fry. There doesn't seem to be any bearing on the parents as to what colour the fry will be for some reason. We don't know why. That's a female bottom right there, as you can see. Not very colourful, but it is a red form because you can see the red in her tail. Good, pretty little fish, as I say, 3 inches, and good to keep. Again, that's a close-up of the ones from Ceres Creek, the blue form. Again, that's 2 sparring males. There's a female just off camera to the right there, and they're showing off the. That's how the photographer gets them to look like that. This is a mature male. It's one of those grown up. These are adults, but only young, very young adults. And as they mature out, that's what they'll look like. So 3 inches long. And the black markings on the fins just set off the colour really well. About 10 miles away from that locale, there's one where this colour form is Tiwa Creek. It's a very coppery coloured form. And that's the same fish as a mature adult. So that's them when they're young, very colourful. And they mature into that, again with the black fringes on the fins, and the red's still present in the finnage, but not to the same extent. Boorman Creek is, again, it's only about 5 miles away actually. You can see in that front fish, he's showing his spawning stroke there actually. The angle's not too good there, but he's flashing that on and off. Obviously in rads, it's pink, the spawning stroke. There's one from King Creek. Again, all these are distinct, and as far as I know, Peter says that they'll probably end up being all the one species still. I don't think he's planning on splitting up any of the rads. But all these different locales, you can see how variable they are. And that's why it's important to me that they're kept separate. You can see the spawning strokes on them. They're both flashing. There's another one from a different creek again. You can see they're all different. And that's why I think we should keep them separate. But quite variable. It tends that the more colourful bodied ones are from the northern part of the range, and the clear bodied ones are more from the southern part of the range. All these photos aren't photoshopped, they're not doctored, it's just the way the light reflects off the scales. Again, there's blue and red, they're the 2 predominant colours. There's a good example of the spawning stroke, as you see on most rainbows. That hasn't been photoshopped, that's just the way that, as I say, the light reflects off the scales. Very different, and that's why I like them the most, actually, I guess. So because they're so different all up and down the coast, they're fairly easy to work out where they came from. Now, Iriatharina werneri is threadfin rainbow fish. They're from New Guinea and Australia. It's one of the very few rainbows that are present in both Australia and New Guinea. As you can see on the distribution map though, there's 2 areas in Australia these guys are from. There's a large star there because it's quite a large area they're from. A small star there because it's only from a very tiny distribution there. And they're quite distinct. And these guys are distinct from the New Guinea threadfins as well. These are only 4.5 centimetres, so that's under 2 inches. So 1 3/4 inches is the maximum range of these wild-caught fish. You can get bigger ones from Florida these days, but they're kind of washed out. And once you see these guys, you really won't want the ones from Florida. They're very pretty. This is the one from the large distribution area, from Queensland, my home state. They were originally discovered or described in southern New Guinea in '73, but then they found them in Australia as well a few years later. We knew about them in Angfa, but it just took the ichthyologists a bit of time to catch up to us. That's the, as I say, the larger distribution area, and that's the one from the other more western distribution area. Quite distinct, very beautiful. But they've got that habit of holding their fins up, their dorsal fins and anal fins when displaying. Very pretty. And as I say, very colourful compared to the ones you get from Florida these days, unfortunately. Next up is Melanotonia australis. They're available in North America. They have been here for a while. They're the distributions on here in Western Australia. Not a bad little fish. This is about a 3-inch fish. This is up in the Pilbara, so that's the more northerly of the 2 distributions. Quite variable. It's a different, the same area, but a different river. Quite variable, very pretty. Some of them are quite outstanding, actually. And that's a good example of the male's first dorsal overlapping the beginning of the second dorsal too. The diagnostic used to sex them. It's so easy once you know what you're looking for. These guys are only 2 inches long, and as such, they're very young adults. They're adults, but incapable of spawning. But they will get an extra inch on top of that. As I keep saying, very variable. Even this one. Now, they used to think that was a natural hybrid between 2 different species, but DNA has proven that it's not. It's just because of its habitat. I'll explain that why in a bit. That's a very colourful form. Still, DNA puts it right in the middle of Australis, so it's still that particular colour form we're trying to get over here in North America now, so I think it'll be very popular. Again, this is only a 3-inch fish, but quite stunning, especially when you keep it in groups. Now, they think that the dark coloured ones, they've adapted to match dark algae covered rocks in their habitat. That's the only reason we can think that they look like that, and that's to stop being predated on by birds.
Do they hold that colour all the time?
Yes, they do. And when they breed, they throw the same colour. So it's if it is an adaptation for for camouflage, it happened a long time ago. Again, different catchment, different colour. And that's why I like keeping them all separate. Again. So that's young, same fish, twice the size at 18 months later. Fully formed adults. Now there's one we call CF australis, so it occurs, it should be in their range, but we know it's definitely not australis. Peter tells me this is going to be the next one he describes, and it's only from one small locale, and that's the fish there. That's a picture of the locale, very small creek. It's the only rainbow fish that occurs there. And this one does get a little bit longer than the australis. This one gets to 4 inches. So that was the first reason we suspected it might be a new species. It was bigger than the other one. And DNA has proven that to be the case. So that's them when they're young. That's them when they're old. Pretty little fish. Very nice. Then we have Ichimensis. Originally, that was thought to only occur in a crater lake called Lake Itchen, from Mount Itchen, inland from Cairns. Lake Itchen was in a national park, and as such, you can't take anything out of a national park in Australia. Some ANGFA guys went in one night and collected some Melanotaenia ichimensis, took them out and put them in their tanks. It was highly illegal. They didn't publicise the fact, but they had some in their tanks, and they were breeding them quite successfully, which was a blessing because not too long after they did that, a sports fisherman decided that he would like to angle in Lake Itchen, and he introduced Australian bass into that lake. The Australian bass caused Melanotaenia ichimensis to go extinct in the wild. They ate them all. And it was not found in that lake after that. It took them 12 months to eat them. So, for all intents and purposes, it's an extinct species, and the only ones that are known to exist are the ones, the illegal ones, in ANGFA members' tanks. That was it. That's about F365, because they took them out in the early 80s, not long after they were described. And it's a pretty enough little fish, but we really don't know if that colour is indicative of what they look like in the wild, because no one can remember. Subsequently, ichthyologists went and had a look at some of the rivers around Lake Itchen, and they actually did find Ichimensis again. No one knew they were in the rivers around. They always thought they were only in the crater lake, but they were in a few rivers around. DNA has been done, and it is indeed Ichimensis. So they're not extinct in the wild as we thought, but it's just a tale to remind everyone how fragile some of these species are, and all it takes is one guy to introduce something that shouldn't be there to cause them to go extinct. That's another photo of Ichimensis. Again, even these guys are quite variable. Pretty little fish. That one's only 2 inches long. They do get bigger, but very healthy. That's the same fish. About 3 inches long, 2.5 to 3 inches long, about 12 months later. Next one is Melanotaenia uchiensis. It's only got a limited distribution again, as indicated by the star, but it's a stunning little fish. I'd like to get uchiensis over here because I think it'll be very popular. ANGFA members had this from the 80s on, but it wasn't described until 2001. It took that long for the ichthyologists again to catch up to us. They're only 2-inch fish and quite young, so they're yet to develop into their full size and colour, which is that. That's them at about the same fish actually, 2 years later, and 8 centimetres is 3 and a bit inches. That's about the maximum size, 3.5 to 4 inches. But you can see how they change. The red intensity goes away a little bit, but it spreads over more of the body, and you get that speckling through the fins. It's a very pretty fish. Again, quite variable. These are all Echiensis, but that first locale is the one that I would like to get over, because it's a very, very pretty fish. Then we get to Melitania dublei and fluviatilis. This is the one that formed the basis of the Australian rainbow fish you get in the local pet stores in North America. We've traced the exports to Florida of different rainbows over the years, so we kind of know what went into the breeding of Australian rainbow fish. The first species that went to Florida was fluviatilis, which at one stage was all this area here, so all inland and down the coast. That was fluviatilis. It was the coastal varieties were described by Jerry Allen in the 1980s as dublei, because they were distinct from the inland forms, that's why there's a blue area here and a green area here. As it turns out, the fluviatilis that went to Florida were actually dublei, so that was the start of it. After that, I think I'll get the order right. After that, Splendida went over as Australian rainbow fish. They were thrown in the same vats or same ponds as the dublei. After that, Australis went over, thrown in the same ponds, because the Florida fish farmers didn't know they were just Australian rainbow fish. So there's about 5 different species mongrelized or hybridized together to form that Australian rainbow fish that you get for $2.99 at the local pet store. And with each inclusion or infusion of new genes, they tend to lose intensity and colour, unfortunately. That's the nominate form of dublei. That was the first rainbow fish I ever caught. The little pink ear here is a good indication that it's either dublei or fluviatilis. They're the only 2 species that's got that little pink dot on the operculum. Very pretty fish. I like these. This used to be my favourite till I discovered rads, but very pretty. Again, very variable. Most of these fish will be quite variable. That's a particularly colourful form. This is available in North America. Gary Lang's breeding some. Mark Nichols has got them. There's quite a few of us in the hobby in North America who've got Kangaroo Creek dublei, and that's what they look like. And I think that's the most colourful form there is. Sorry. Again, it's got that pink dot on the operculum, and that's the diagnostic used for dublei and fluviatilis. That's a good example of that these are both males. The end of the first dorsal overlaps the beginning of the second, and the anal fin is quite pointed. But this particular colour form has got really good colour in both anal, dorsal and caudal. And the intensity of the colours is quite outstanding, actually. Those guys are about 3 inches long, which is about the maximum for them. Again, the females aren't anything like the males, unfortunately. This is this catchment is only about, I'd say, I'm trying to translate into miles, probably 20 miles away from that first catchment. So it's similar, very similar fish, but not quite as colourful. Again, this is about 50 miles away again. About 20 miles away. As you can see, the variation is outstanding in these. And that's why we keep them separate. Jubilei, according to Peter, will not be split up into different species. So if you have got a jubilei, keep your locale, but it won't be a different species. Now, this is the fluviatilis part of the equation. This is the inland ones from the Murray-Darling River system that I showed you earlier. These guys get to about 4 inches. They've still got the little pink dot on the operculum, which is diagnostic of both species, but they're not quite as colourful to my mind. The background colour is more spread over the whole fish, but the other one was more colourful in my opinion. Again, the caudals got the little spots on all the fins actually. It's a pretty enough fish. This is from the type locale on the Murrumbidgee River, which is a tributary of the Darling River. Again, the male's displaying his spawning stripe there. It's yellow in this species. As you can see, very variable, even within the same huge river system, depending on which tributary they're coming from, as to what colour they are. Then we go to Melanotania inornata. This is one of the big guys. This is from the north. It goes from that star right around to this star here. So all wrap around there. That's about 1,000 miles, I guess. So it's quite long. These guys get to about 5 inches. I've seen them 7. And they're quite outstanding actually. They're good mature males. Males of this species get very deep bodied, as you can see, and they will, as they age, they'll develop a little bit of a nuchal hump here too, like some of the cichlids do. The spotting in the fins of these make them really, really attractive, as you can see, and that's a 5-inch fish, so it's quite impressive when you see, say, 3 or 4 males and 10 females swimming around in a school in a tank, in a planted tank. It's quite stunning. Again, different locale. That's a 4-inch fish, so it's an adult, not quite fully grown yet, but it's getting there. Very colourful. Again, that's a 4-inch fish. That's a 3-inch fish. These were actually caught in 2007. I know that because in 2007 I went to the Angler Convention in Darwin. These were caught from the Kumali crater, and Kumali crater used to be a uranium mine. We went for our collective trip after the convention to that spot, and those guys were caught. We all went out there with our seines and traps, and we were going to catch some rainbows. When we got there, we discovered that it was an open cut line, more or less, and it had vertical slopes for about 30 feet. We couldn't get to the water unless we wanted to jump in, and then we couldn't get out. So a guy had his fly fishing rod there, and he actually caught these guys on a fly rod. And that's them about an hour after they were caught. Very colourful little fish. They're about 3/4 grown, and The next one is the same fish a year later, and at full size, and with good food. They get fed every day in an aquarium. They don't necessarily eat every day in the wild. But that's them fully grown, and it's the same fish. Quite a stunning fish, really. They're in the hobby now in Australia, and we hope to get them in North America shortly. Different locale of an Inornata, that's a 5-inch fish. And then we go to Splendida, down the east coast of Australia. That's roughly adjacent to the Great Barrier Reef. These are related to the other guys, but Splendida are distinct and different species. Very colourful. Again, these guys, that's a 4-inch fish. That one's a 5-inch fish, 5.5 actually. Very colourful, different locales, different colours, same story. I'll keep repeating it if you want me to, but I don't think I need to. That's only a 2-inch fish. That particular form is quite colourful, even from a very early age. And the fins are quite well developed. They'll spawn at that size. It's only half size. This is from the type, near the type locale of the species. That's a young fish. That's only under 2 inches. It's about 1 3/4 inches there, I guess. So even from that size, they're quite precocious and they will start breeding then. The idea with rainbows and blue eyes is breed them young, breed them often, because they will stop breeding after a certain period of time. And that's the same fish as the previous one, 2 years older and fully grown up. Very colourful. That's the female on the bottom and 2 males displaying above her. So they grow from that to that. You can see the increase in the body width from top to bottom. And they're just starting to get their nuptial hump there. You'll see a good example of that coming up later. Different species. I particularly like that colour form. To me that's purple, and it's not very common in rainbow fish actually. There are a couple of different species and locales that exhibit that coloration, but not too many. I like that one, and I'd like to get my hands on it. I've never actually seen that one in live. I never had the opportunity to work with them in Australia, but I'd like to get some. Melanotonia tatei is a desert rainbow fish. This only gets to 4 inches, so it's one of the smaller ones. And that's this is touchy. That's its distribution map there. As I said, this is all desert in here. So there's not too many rivers, and it's not all that variable because of that. That gives you an example of what it looks like. That's a 3-inch fish. So it's an adult.
Ken, we have to wrap it up now.
All right.
Just to warn you.
All right. That's the picture of locale. I'll keep going. Species Deepwater Creek is an undescribed species, and it will be, Peter Unmack tells me. That's what it looks like, very colourful, and we'll be getting some of them in. Species Running River, you might have heard there was this is a new species that was in danger of being out-competed by fish coming up from the mouth of the river into the upper reaches where these guys were, and they were going to be hybridized out of existence. They're decent size, 5 inches. They were saved through the judicious use of spending of some money by Peter Unmack. Nigrans is available in North America, and that's what they look like. That black stripe across is fairly diagnostic of them. They've all got it, again, quite variable from the different locales. This is called exquisita for a reason. It's only got small distribution, but it's a very dainty little fish. Quite pretty, only small. That's a 2-inch fish, and he's ready to breed. very colourful. This is a CF exquisita, so this is going to be a new species, and it's that one. Chrysalis, again, is one of the dainty ones. That particular, as you can see, it's got a yellow spawning stripe. 3-inch fish. Pygmy rainbow fish, only comes from a limited distribution, but is available in North America. That's around, that's a good example of that nuchal hump. That's a really old male. That's probably F251 or something. But it's fairly indicative of the coloration you'll get in a pygmy and an old male. Maccullochi, there's a problem. If you've got a Maccullochi with a locale, you've got to keep them separate. These will definitely be at least three new species coming out of Maccullochi. That's the nominate form. If you've got a Maccullochi, that's what they should look like. If you've got one from Skull Creek, this thing is only half the size of the others, and that's what it looks like. It's quite different. This is only a tiny little fish. It's less than 2 inches, whereas most Maccullochis are 4. So it's half the size of the others, and they look quite different. It will be a new species as soon as Peter gets around to naming it. There's one from Moa Island, which will be another new species. This is about the same size as Skull Creek, but different diagnostically, and Peter says it's quite distinct. There's another one, Burton Creek, which is from right over there, and that's going to be a new species too. That's what it looks like. And we go to Trifasciata. These fish are huge. I've seen them 9 inches. I've collected them 9 inches. They tell me that the maximum length is 7. They're available in North America, not all these locales, but as you can see, quite stunning fish at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches. That's how big they get.
Got some of those from Gary.
Gary's got different locales of them. They're stunning. But they have been around in North America for quite a while. Goyder River's the dominant form that everyone has here in North America. It's probably the most colourful one. I prefer some of the others, but it's very colourful. These were collected in 1994 by a friend of mine in a locale. He went back 10 years later, collected from exactly the same locale. He had GPS, and they're the fish he caught. Couldn't find the yellow ones at all. We don't know why that is, but over 10 years, the rainbow fish in that one stream changed from that colour to that colour.
How are all the other yellow rainbows that were in that area still yellow?
No, he couldn't find the yellow ones. They're gone. There's different
Ken, I'm sorry, we actually have to,
These you don't go over now.
6 minutes, Ted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we have, it's supposed to end
At 4. We don't start at 4:30.
we don't start at 4:30. My apologies.
Yep.
Also down.
Ken, go as long as you like.
Thanks, mate.
You got another 15 minutes.
All right, that one. We think what happens is these live in a monsoonal region. When the monsoon comes, we think all the rainbow fish get washed out to sea. And then the streams are repopulated from the upper reaches of the rivers. Now, the fish that come down and repopulate the lower reaches might come from one tributary one year, another tributary the next year, and for some reason, whatever it might be, they're different colours. I don't know why that would be, because they're from the same stream, eating the same diet. I don't know why, but that's the only thing we can come up with.
That happens about once a decade, you said?
No, every year.
Every year.
Every year there's a monsoon, and that's most years, a wet season. But these Trifasciatas are particularly affected by that. The Goyder River one, which I went past before, is the one its locale is a natural marble outcropping. It stands very high pH water. You can put that in your Malawi tank, and it's big and fast enough and vicious enough, if you like, to be able to be a good dither fish for your Malawi cichlids. I particularly like that one, Market Creek. It's really colourful form, as you can see. And these guys, that's a 7-inch fish, so quite impressive when you see a group of them like that. Again, all these, Peter tells me Trifasciata is going to be split up into about 5 different species. That's why it's important to keep your locales distinct. Again, this is an undescribed form, Wallaby Creek. It's going to be a new species too. Quite pretty enough little fish. And then we go on to pseudomugils, the blue eyes. These are tiny guys, tetra-sized guys. Dorsalis has got a huge range. It only gets to 1 inch. And this is one of the ones that you cannot breed in fresh water. If anyone tells you they bred these guys in fresh water, you can call BS on that. They won't spawn in fresh water successfully. It's got to be at least brackish. A friend of mine has changed these guys up into full seawater in a little nano tank where he's got corals, and they exist quite happily in full seawater, and they're breeding quite prolifically in that. He loses one every now and again to his corals, but he didn't mind because they look quite pretty. When they're in fresh water, all this colour washes out, so it's a silver little fish. It's at least brackish water or full sea water before they exhibit this nice blue here and the gold tones on the body. It's normally found in the estuaries, so it's adapted that. The blue eyes have got this distinctive habit of holding their little pectoral fins up in the air, or the males do, when they're displaying to the females. They all do it. The ones from New Guinea do it, the ones from Australia do it. It's quite cool to watch, actually. Again, these guys are only 1 inch. This is an example of the female. So quite plain, and the male's displaying around her. This one's called inconspicuous for a reason. There's not much to it. That's the most colourful one fish of inconspicuous I've ever seen. Mostly they're silver, even in salt water, and that's in salt water. Again, 3 centimetres, that's only 1.5 inches. Malice is one of my favourites. This is called the honey blue eye. A lot of people like this one. It's 2 males holding their little pecks up, displaying the females off to the side here. It's only got a very limited distribution. I am trying to hurry too. As you can see, where that is in southeast Queensland there is probably the most populated area in Queensland. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to live there, including the honey blue eyes, and they're losing out to urbanisation, pollution, loss of habitat. It's quite a few things, but very, very pretty little fish. They are available in North America. Unfortunately, as far as I know, not in the States. They're available in Canada. I'm getting some of them in 2 weeks, and I will let people know when they're around. Gertrude have been here in North America for a long time. They're from both New Guinea and Australia. You can see there how close New Guinea is to Australia. It's got a huge distribution, and spotted blue eye, they're quite variable, but that's the most southern occurring one. Very pretty little fish, again, 1.5 inches, 2 inches tops. That's young, it's breedable couple of males, it's exactly the same fish, they're fully grown. So they do change a little bit, but basically the same. That's the typical habitat you'll find them in. That's probably about maybe 3-4 feet deep. That's pretty typical. Signifer has got a huge range. This has got the biggest range of any Australian fish that I've ever collected. It goes from right up the top here in North Queensland all the way down to Victoria. Peter Unmack tells me there's about 6 species in Signifer. So if you've got a locale, you've got to keep them separate because they will change very probably. They are available in North America, not too many with locales. So if you get one with locales, they're quite variable in size and coloration. This particular locale has got that really nice red, coppery red in the fins. Very distinctive, very pretty. This one's yellow. And they range mostly about 2 inches, 2 inches maximum. There is a particularly giant form, which is a little bit bigger, 2.5. That's the maximum. That's a giant blue line. Very pretty little fish. That's the rather large one at 2.5 inches. Tinellus comes from particularly acid water, from swampy water, very tannin stained, and looks best if you can duplicate that habitat. Otherwise it washes out somewhat. This was originally described from a female, and when the male was discovered, they wanted to describe it as a new species, and then they worked out that it's the same species. I love this one because I love saying this name. It's Scatterogenichthes vermilipinus. It's only found on one cattle station in the centre of Queensland. It's an area that would be about the size of this room, actually. The average mean depth of that artesian basin that it's in is about 3 inches. It never gets any deeper than 3 inches. That's it. It's fairly nondescript. But it's incredibly endangered because occurring in that same little body of water, Gambusia horbrocki. They don't know how they got in there, but they've been in there since the 50s, we assume, and they've been coexisting with the Scatterogenichthes all this time. At the moment, they're trying to catch all the blue eyes out, rotten the springs, and then reintroduce the blue eyes after they've killed all the Gambusia. And they're hoping that'll work. But it looks like they're not doing too badly at the moment, and it's only a little fish, this one. This is about an inch. But they're trying to save it. That's about it. So, again, all these photos are from Gunther Schmieder. If you want more information on ANGFA, go to angfa.org. You can read about the organisation. Membership's currently $30 Australian a year. That's about $22 US, so it's not very expensive, and it's quite good. CARES, I've told you all about CARES before. I don't know why that slide is in twice, but you've seen all the ones there. Again, North Finn have made fish food that all these rainbows and blue eyes take wild caught, so it's good stuff. Don't forget, this is their bookstore. That's that particular colour form of rad that I really like. So, any questions?
We get time for one question.
Okay, one question. Who's got it?
I got it.
Yes, Rich.
So I got some Sano dorsalis. Keeping it about half strength seawater, I'm not getting much egg production. Is that appropriate for them? Do I raise the temperature maybe?
That's strange. you should be, if you, maybe increase the salinity a bit.
Okay. I was
As I
concerned
said-
with keeping them too salty, but.
Yeah, no, my friend has upgraded them to full salt water,
And
and
still free.
they're throwing eggs every day.
All right, I'll give that a try. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. The pond covers and water garden group's gonna meet in here.